And hi everyone, welcome to another episode of People Talks. I'm your host Chee Tung from EngageRocket, the fastest growing people analytics tech company in Southeast Asia. And in this series, we've been exploring different aspects of how companies and leaders are navigating the current pandemic to extract insights and practices from those at the top of the field. And right now, actually, the world seems to be at a bit of an inflection point in the war against COVID. And while the health situation, fingers crossed, looks to be in the early stages of stabilizing, there's quite a lot to be said about the economic impact of the crisis, as well as the profound transformation that is taking place as workplaces are forced to accelerate their digital strategies. Today, it's my great pleasure to have with us Miss Anuradha Purbey, People Director of Asia at AVIVA, to share more about her experience in this space. Hi, Anu, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Cheetung, and thank you for having me over.
Thank you so much. And maybe as a quick background, Anu, for those of us who have been perhaps living under a rock for a while, could you share a little bit more about what AVIVA does?
Yes. So, Aviva is an insurance company, and we are in both life and GI, so life and general insurance, as well as we are one of the leading employee benefits provider in Singapore. We are a UK company, and in Singapore we have more than 1,300 employees, including our digital sales force. Also, one of our key disruptive models, long before the virus sort of invaded our lives, has been to focus on the intermediary way of the FA channel, the financial advisory channel. And one of our core beliefs has been to provide choice to our customers so that our advisors not just sell Aviva's products, which is nice to have, but also, based on your needs, sell other organizations' products. So that way we are able to sort of bring forth a holistic solution to what our customers need either now or in the future.
And that's wonderful. Thanks for joining us. And just as a question out of curiosity, how long have staff at Aviva been working from home? The circuit breaker is now we're about halfway through, but how long have your staff been working from home?
So we started pretty much around the Valentine's Day, actually. So around 14th of February, and it has been quite staggered. So I think when we started to understand potentially how disruptive the virus can be, obviously safety of our employees is paramount to us. And I think it was very important to find a way by which we can balance the safety of our employees as well as take care of the needs of our stakeholders, including our customers. So slowly and steadily, we've been experimenting with work from home with the usual BCP plans that people would have, like Team A, Team B, alternating, stumbling at some places, figuring out about, just how many people actually have laptops, need laptops, the entire bandwidth that's required without, the business getting disrupted. Um, and we were very fortunate because we had sort of embarked on our digital journey way before, like I said earlier, the virus invaded our lives, and that sort of helped us in good stead. In the form that now, as you know, no face-to-face sales are allowed, and that's been one of our key ways by which the advisors and customers came in contact with each other. So now to be able to do it without actually meeting customers or advisors, and then sort of submitting the policies, incepting the policies, being able to service that the entire life cycle, and to be able to pay claims where required, I think it needed a whole digital infrastructure, as you mentioned earlier, to be in place. And we were lucky that we started that off anticipating that we obviously need to move along this line for efficiency purposes, for customer experience purposes. But now it felt as if it was survival.
and and uh, and it's very fortuitous that that happened. How I understand that you mentioned that there was already business continuity plans that were in place prior to this. Tell me more about that. Like how did Aviva go about business continuity planning, and did you guys have a dry run or any exercises prior to the 14th of February.
Yes. So actually, I remember when it was around 5th of Jan, and that's when news began to be a bit more visible about the virus, and we were coming up to the Chinese New Year holiday. So that's where our business continuity manager, people from my team, including myself, health and safety, communication, and our leadership teams got together and said, well, we don't know what we don't know. We've had a pandemic playbook, but this was like completely unprecedented. We had learnings from SARS, which were documented, but a lot of us had never experienced this. So that was the first time we realized what's written in the manual versus what you go through. The dynamism around it is, and the nuances are just not the same. So we were very lucky, and we started with very simple things. Like we just, I remember before going off to Bali during the Chinese New Year break, we got together and put a WhatsApp group in place because we felt communication was critical. Like even if we didn't know, it was important to have a channel in place where people can just say, do you know something, have you heard of this, that kind of very interactive but very fast moving communication.
And sorry to interrupt, Anu. Who was in this WhatsApp group?
So this was essentially our leadership teams from all our entities, my business partners, the health and safety manager, as well as the comms lead and our business continuity manager.
Right. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, and I should have mentioned the facilities team as well. So the person who leads facilities was in there as well, because we had an idea that many different stakeholders will get involved, but we weren't sure exactly who would play what sort of a role. Like yes, there was something in the playbook for BCP, but this was unprecedented. And also, I think it was very timely because around the Chinese New Year time, when everyone was on holiday, a lot of news began to emerge and a lot of decisions began to be formed, especially around, do people need to work from home? There were nuances of family members maybe catching the infection, and whether we need to have the rest of the family sort of do stay at home. And this was long before any of these arrangements were mandated. So it just helped us, have those communication channels open. I think the next big thing was to get masks and hand sanitizers. Luckily, as part of our business continuity planning, we already had a few thousand masks in place, and enough arrangements with our facilities providers to have the hand sanitizers. However, what we very quickly realized is we needed more. And so it was really sourcing. And at that point of time, the masks were a rare commodity. It was the supply chains were repurposed to the healthcare workers, as we all know. So, full marks to my health and safety team who led this task of sourcing, scouting, making sure we had. And then we are very fortunate. We had masks coming in all the way from our head office in London, along with a box of hand sanitizers. So we had that infrastructure in place. And that was quite important for us to feel quite confident and to be able to supply this to people who needed it at that point of time. So even though the advisory was not to put masks on, our people facing teams, so like our customer services team, our advisors had the masks just so that they remain safe.
Wow, that's incredible. And so you guys started basically within a 2 to 3 week time frame, when going from just starting to become aware of this as an alert
Yeah.
to a complete work from home on the 14th of February. How did that go down? Because I'm just trying to recall back at that time, we hadn't even really issued travel advisories as a country. And I believe even the number of cases probably wasn't even above 100.
Yes.
So it must have been a very difficult conversation to suddenly transition everybody to work from home and to potentially reduce the productivity levels of the whole staff. I mean, the virality of the virus at that time was not very certain. Even the lethality of it wasn't. So what were some of the considerations before you guys moved everybody to this work from home arrangement?
Yes, I should clarify that actually around the 14th of Feb, we did not move 100% of our organization to work from home.
I
We
see.
divided our organization into teams. And so teams who could absolutely work from home. So, for example, if I take the case of my own HR team, we had team A and team B. And then we started to experiment. We were very clear that eventually we will have to move to work from home, just putting some of our foresight hats on, given that the infection rate of the virus is very high. This was something, so although the fatality thankfully was low, but there was enough research coming in that it spreads very quickly. And the talk of social distancing and to see what was happening in China were signals enough. And I know that at that point of time, mercifully, we didn't have a lot of infections in Singapore, but you could see the trend. Also, in this world of internet, the other consideration was to just see what was the literature out there. So I happened to have a look at a video from the Columbia Business School, from the Johns Hopkins University, and they were saying that once a virus comes into the ecosystem, it will spread. And although the governments are not yet shutting down or shutting down certain borders, because of the global supply chains and all the connectivity, like we're more connected than we were, I dare say, even during SARS. And so it was bound to spread. So when you heard some things like this, I think it was just planning a bit in advance. As you said, it wasn't easy. So even to get into a mode where there were team A and team B, and not meeting, having more than 10 people in meeting rooms. We had like sales conferences planned for 300-400 people. We had sales incentive trips planned to like South Africa, Iceland, with anywhere from 50 people to hundreds of people. And yeah, we had to make, our CEO had to make that decision to say we are willing to forego the money, and all the excitement for the safety of our employees and advisors. So it was a very tough decision. It was also tough because there was no leading practice at that time. So sometimes in leadership, it's easier to default to, oh, this was done before, and so you can justify that. There is no playbook in this type of a situation.
Yeah,
It
and it
was
could just
pretty
have
much.
easily, I mean, right now with hindsight, I mean, that was very prescient and it was a very good leadership decision, but it could have just as easily gone the other way. And then if I, I I I mean, just thinking about alternative histories, right? If maybe everything got contained in China and never really spread to the rest of the world, all of a sudden, the people are going to be criticizing the decision and say, "Oh,
Yes.
you overreacted," and
Yes.
all kinds of stuff. So it's a I mean, a lot of respect for making that very swift and decisive action by the leadership team. What were some of the other challenges that you guys had in those early days and even up to now, right? And how are you guys overcoming it?
Yeah, I think the challenge really in this type of a situation is that no one size fits all. There is that always that difficult balance between employee safety, productivity, as well as ensuring that people, where face-to-face help is needed, there is that interaction. And I think we are not geared as organizations to inherently to deal with a situation like this. So when it comes to allocation of IT infrastructure, allocation of the IT bandwidth, for example, not all roles can be done working from home. People don't want to work from home. Some people, uh, they can't focus at home. They want to come into office. That's where they can work. Um, and there were other people who were very scared to come into work because of all the stories of infection spreading. So I suppose when organizations are structured to deal with yes, there is flexibility, but there is also a structure in there to a completely unstructured way of working, and to transition to this new normal overnight, it takes a lot of judgment calls, it takes a lot of resilience, it takes a lot of courage, but above all, I think it takes a lot of trust and compassion. So, and I think that is
Yeah.
something that we had to demonstrate. We trusted our people to be and do the very best that they can. We've had instances where we've been on calls like this and children have popped up from behind and home-based schooling, and people are juggling between school responsibilities, putting on their best show for Zoom meetings, or and then doing their work. But we've said, look, there is an intrusion into the private space. There is a co-mingling of public, I mean, your official and, sort of private space. It's all right. So you have the
Yeah.
permission to be able to do that. The other thing is, and this is just a very strange comment that my daughter made, and she said, I don't think I would have ever said this in my lifetime. She's 19. And she said, I don't want to look at my screen. I'm like kind of tired. And so,
Wow.
yeah, I was surprised as well. Her university, she's with Johns Hopkins University, it's gone online. And, that's a new challenge. And a lot of us struggle with that. So I think we had to, in many strange ways, find that cohesion and connectedness even more in a world where all of us were literally not physically with each other. And so it was, yeah. Sorry, you were saying
No,
something.
that's, that I really like how you're saying what you're saying really brings out the humanity of work actually, like where we now are forced into situations where we have to accept the whole person. I mean, not just whatever we bring to work, right? And it's like the whole person, including our background, unkempt hair from not being able to cut it for the last 1 month,
Yeah.
and so on, right? And I'm really curious. Did Aviva have a work from home policy prior to this?
Yes, so we had what we called a flexible working policy. But what we had not anticipated is, like, currently we have 96% of our workforce working from home. But
Wow.
that's under extreme circuit breaker measures. But even before that arrived, like I said earlier, it was 50%, then we gradually moved to 70%. We didn't have those kind of policies. So we had to, quickly innovate and literally think on our feet. I think, to your earlier point, Cheetah, what really mattered was we had to cut through the chase and figure out what really mattered most. And what are
Mm,
your priorities as we transition, and how will we deliver them? And then everything else became noise,
mm,
in terms of the background, in terms of uh, it was quite important, I have to say, for some of us, not being able to put makeup on and go on to calls and all that. I felt that all of us, like, just came together and felt, does that really matter, or is it important that
mm,
we understand what our people are going through? People were going through that usual grief process of, denial, and then, gradually anger, and then moving to acceptance. And then there were people who were like, who had families in different parts of the world, aging parents, and they still can't travel. So they were dealing with their own personal nuances, and yet, dealing with everything else that was going on in their own families and workplace. I think the enormity of the situations, it was just that compassion that took a
mm,
completely different level to be able to navigate this. And I don't
mm,
think that we're still out of it. I don't mean to sound very naive or make it very simple, but in many ways, if you are, I felt that if you are able to, like, cut out the noise and focus on, as you said, the individual, and the individual as a whole, and not as, just someone who comes to office and has a contractual relationship with you, I think it eased off the learning process. I think
mm,
everyone was more vulnerable, be it leaders or employees. I think we learned the whole concept of systemic leadership came alive, where, we were leading at some places and following in some places, and reversing the
mm,
role and following and leading. Like, go back to our task force. None of us are epidemiologists or healthcare experts, albeit we are in insurance and we are a bit more aligned to listening to those concepts. But we all had to put our best hat in and, respect each other's judgments to be able
mm.
to come this far, and, to be able to navigate through what lies ahead.
Mm, that's a great point. That level of empathy that we need to have for everybody, because not only are we dealing with the sharpest economic decline since the Great Depression, we're also dealing with a health situation. We're dealing with isolation. It's a lot for people to take. And I don't know whether this is too early to be thinking about this, but it did cross my mind that. Is there a plan for resuming work back in the office? Because I mean, for me personally, now thinking about it, I don't really know how to wrap my head around it. And what do you foresee as some of the things that we need to watch out for as people start getting back into the office?
Yeah. So, as we speak, actually, we are working through the plan. We have a few weeks before June 1. So, that's my priority right now. A couple of things for sure will be people have gotten adjusted to a new normal. And now, within a very short period of time, they have to transition to another normal. And so, as human
Yeah.
beings, it's going to be extremely stressful. So, and the other thing is, while some people will be happy to get back to work, there are others who would question the need to get back to work because they figured out that they feel a lot more empowered, probably more productive working from home. So, as managers, as leaders, we have to help teams navigate through this, the new ways of working, as I would say, which are still getting formed.
Mm,
um, I think there is also this people are worried about the second wave, and there will be that
mm,
fear because look, the only thing that's happened with the circuit breaker situation is it's just eased off the pressure on the healthcare system, but the virus is here to stay. And it's going to be, in my opinion, at least 12 to 18 months before we can confidently say that a vaccine
mm,
is available and is being mass produced. I mean, I'm hoping it happens earlier, but past experiences show it's taken that long. So pretty much we'll
mm,
have to live with the virus. So things like social distancing, leaving like a 2 meter or 1 meter distance, not being able to meet, actually continuing with your your virtual meetings, dealing with the fact that some teams will still be working from home, so there will be a staggered return. I think, and then trying to stay calm as
mm,
still, dealing with your own set of uncertainty. I think the stability, the hope that's required, all of that will take a different dimension as people start to return to work.
mm. I think that's a really good point. Last question for me. If you have one tip to give to a leader or somebody who is responsible for an organization, in terms of how they should think about their people going forward in the next few months, what would that tip be?
Yeah. I think the tip for me would be about compassion. And it would be to say that um, compassion, we need to be compassionate, not just to what people probably are going um, or what people are going through in their own personal lives, but also be compassionate towards some of the questions that they might have, as you earlier said, because we are faced with some huge economic challenges about our jobs, about whether there will be pay cuts or whether there will be growth, or what can I do now so that I stay relevant in for the next 6 months, 12 months. It's just to be a little more compassionate towards everything that employees are going through while taking care of yourself, because as leaders we have to take what we
Mm,
call self-care, because we need to be calm, we need to be composed, we need to be authentic, and we need to take care of others. So it's making
mm.
sure that we take care of ourselves while we take care of others.
That's wonderful. So self-care and compassion for those that we are leading. Thank you so much for sharing your insights today, Anu. And once again, my guest today is Anuradha Purbey, People Director of Asia at AVIVA. And I've been Chitong from EngageRocket. This has been another episode of People Talks. Thank you very much for watching.